Okay, we are live now. A very good afternoon, a very good morning, a very good day, a very good evening. I am not sure where you are. I am in Johannesburg, that's Southern Africa, and it is exactly 12 minutes past 1 o'clock. It's a Sunday afternoon. Am with guests here today, and it's the Africa Youth Month for the end of the first of November. But our youth until the end of November is Africa Youth Month, and we celebrate youth in entrepreneurship, using technology, what type of entrepreneurship that you are doing. So we have invited guests here who are going to assist us in tackling this topic, catalyzing development in Africa. It's been, a topic all around Africa. Is being feel like they are not involved much. And if we wait for that jobs, it might be a long way, a long walk to freedom, I guess. Uh, so it's mainly based on high investment in youth, creating new opportunities for young Africans across the continent and in the that's more like it. And in studio, I am with writer, um, with writer here. I think we are all familiar with the writer is. We've been with writer already for quite some time. And it's been a great, if I may call it, if I may call it that way. We've had a great relationship, and it's something that we really appreciate.
Martha, your line is bad.
Yes, can you hear me? Now, what is this something?
Martha?
Yes, can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you at all. You're on freeze.
Yes, can you hear me? So now?
No.
Okay. I don't know if my line is the one that is.
I can't hear anything. Your line is bad. Yeah, it's just cutting.
Is it cutting?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better, but yeah, it's bad.
Hear me now?
That's better, yeah.
Hey, technology.
Yeah, it's failing us, ne? From your side, can you hear me?
Ngiyakuzwa baba clearly. Martha?
Oh.
I can hear you here, but we can't hear you, all of us.
The network is all good on my side.
Then all three of us, that means our network then is not good.
Not really. I know for Kifilwe it's been bumping. I saw that it was bumping, but I could see. Let me try again. If not, you might go on and do the intro while I'm fixing on my side.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
You can hear me clearly, Kifilwe, ne? You're on mute.
Yeah, 100%. I can 100% hear you. Is Prof also struggling to log in?
I have logged him in.
I can't see him. I can only see you.
I can see him now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yes, we can see you, Martha. You sound good now.
Okay, I don't know what just went down. I think that's what happens when we don't own our own, platforms and technology. It can just go back. Anyway, once again, a very good afternoon, gentlemen. And like I was saying earlier, we have Picta in studio today, and everybody is much aware of who Picta is. And they've been with us for quite some time. We have invited them in studio as of last year. I think I hear background. All right. We have invited them in studio before to talk mainly on technology. And seeing that it's Africa Youth Month, we thought, why not bring them again and also have guests who are much more experienced in youth development and entrepreneurship. And, welcome everybody who is tuned in. I see somebody who wants to add it to the stream. You can watch and connect from our Facebook, which is Radio 54 African Panorama Live on Facebook. And that's where you can watch from and also comment from there. And once again, a very good afternoon. And I would like to call in Mr. Sonwabo Mdwaba to introduce Picta and the topic for the day.
Thank you, Martha. I'm Sonwabo Mdwaba. I think Martha said I must continue. I'm Sonwabo Mdwaba. I'm the president of Picta. I'm just going to give a quick introduction of Picta. Picta was founded in 2020 July during COVID lockdown in South Africa. The organization it's a digital transformative organization geared towards advancing the ICT pursuance of African small to medium enterprises, youth, women, and persons with disability through the facilitation and engagement of an inclusive ecosystem that is conducive to economic growth. Picta has been inspired by the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki's vision for our continent, as well as the ideals of the pioneers of the Pan-Africanism from up to the diaspora. Picta, although Picta is a new organization like the movements before it, it aspires to the main goal of the Pan-African movement, which was to get Africans all over the world to unite and to work together for economic independence in Africa. The relevance of the unity of purpose in the 21st century is very pronounced, especially in the digital and technological age and COVID-19 times. To this end, Picta advocates for an integrated continent united based on the ideas of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. Our organization requests for African unity has been inspired by the spirit of Pan-Africanism, focusing on women, youth, inclusion in the digital era, and economic emancipation. It is motivated by the development based on the self-reliance, self-determination of the African child being part of the digital transformation. In the past 15 months, Picta has been actively focusing on building relationships outside in different areas of the continent to meet its mission of being a champion for enabling environment for Africa digital innovation, IP commercialization, digital transformation, and economic emancipation. We see ourselves as a unified voice advocating Africa's socio-economic development and sustainability through fostering Africa's child digital inclusion, collaboration, and increased cooperation in the ICT digital ecosystem through Africa Digital Transformation. Catalyzing Africa as an innovation powerhouse of the future has been establishing partnerships, basically, as I've just said, to build knowledge base, thought leadership. We've managed to broadcast or host over 15 webinars in the 15 months that we've been in existence. partnership to build capacity with organizations such as CSIR in South Africa and other countries, universities between South Africa and some of the SADC countries, and COMESA block of the continent, government institution, private organization. I'm sure this month is a youth month. If you are youth, you might know the feeling of trying to break into the ICT industry without any contacts or access to information. We have a collaborative platform that enables innovation and creativity. We bring stimulation and insight around technology or digital tech space by organizing hackathons or meetups and facilitating digital skills training in various countries of the continent. We have built digital ecosystem. We've engaged so far and partnered with over 7 universities in 5 countries. Our engagement model began and continued to be centered around developing partnerships with universities in every country where we are active. This makes us accessible to the youth. We have reached out to schools through a platform that we've developed still in South Africa, through a platform P2DL, scholars to introduce OIR related courses, especially cyber awareness. We are going to roll out the platform to the rest of Africa in the next coming 12 months. Schools, as we all can agree, they're a good feeder to the universities. So, for those that would like or might not go to university, it's also important that they get exposed to the digital skills training, which PICA does through Cisco Academy partnership. We have established a platform which will monitor scholars' progression from high school all the way to the job market and to entrepreneurship. We are creating a vocational work program that is going to be free to high school learners in the second quarter of 2022. To engage fully with female youth, we have created Wide Women in Digital Era that is focusing on workshops, webinars, and other events to reach out to the African girl child and expose them or engage them on tech and make sure that they've got exposure to tech space, coaching, and mentorship. We host hackathons for developers, and through these hackathons, we give developers more confidence. We've hosted so far 3 hackathons. One of the hackathons, we had engaged with 4 countries in the continent. We are in the process of creating PICA youth societies in every university that we have partnered with from 2022. We want to see PICA Youth Platform expand even further. Success will involve providing greater capacity, providing for the needs in the job market. We are completing a platform that we're building, P3AY, to be able to offer youth from the continent employment and expose them to different private companies and organizations for government. Seeing a more pulsating digital tech ecosystem is our vision. We want to help create high-value jobs, strengthen social inclusion, digital inclusion. To wrap up, Martha, we have started working outside South Africa in the past 10 months. We are working in the SADC environment. We are working in the COMESA environment. We are working also in the ECOWAS block. I thank you, Martha. Thank you very much. That was my introduction.
All right, thank you so much. That was Mr. Sonwabo Mtwaba, who is the president of PICTA. I think, like I said earlier, we are all familiar with who is Mr. Mtwaba and what PICTA is all about. And I must congratulate PICTA. It's their second year now. It was started last year, 2020, during lockdown. And they've done amazing things. The hackathons and all the webinars and seminars that we did here on radio, on ICT, it's all centered around our relationship with PICTA. And they've been drivers, especially where the shows that I've done regarding ICT and stuff, PITA came on board. They have the experience, they have the expertise, they have the personnel to actually push this. So I just want to thank PITA. I want to thank Mr. Mdwaba. Still the head of entrepreneurship in PITA. And it's been a great journey. That's why entrepreneurship is always, part of the topics. It's something that is closer to our hearts, and we believe that is the what will drive Africa to Agenda 2063. And in studio, we also have Mr. Kefilwe Mukwena, who is a development worker, facilitator, knowledge manager, project manager, and he's also into governance, who is going to also help us unpack the topic on catalyzing action for youth development in Africa. Welcome, Mr. Mukwena.
Speaking to myself now, technology. Thanks a lot for the invitation, and I'm looking forward for the engagement, and just to share my experience as a young person. This is such an intriguing topic. I had to ask myself a lot of questions, and in preparing for this panel and for this discussion. So thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward for the discussion.
All right. Thank you so much for being here and to share your knowledge and your skills and your experience. I know that there is quite a lot of things that you have to do, but we do appreciate the time. And in studio as well, we have Mr. Mthunzi Mdwaba. I think I also need to change my surname. The Mdwaba surname seems to be pushing, the agenda in Africa and around the world. It's just connected to, to power, to to technology and all that. I just want to say thank you so much, Professor, for being with us. Professor Mdwaba is an AU-endorsed International Labour Organization Director General for 2022. Which is quite a huge post, and we vouch for him, and we believe that he is going to do quite amazing things. He is a CEO entrepreneur, a deal maker, and a negotiator. And in everything that he do, I've seen a lot of success stories. We were with him, I think that's sometime last year. Yeah. And he did quite amazing things. And thank you so much, Mr. Mdwaba, for being with us.
Thank you very much, Martha. I think that whilst we must be flattered by your wish to be in the Mdwaba family, and with problem in having, unfortunately, I've run out of brothers and I've run out of sons. So not quite sure where we would negotiate this situation. But we can all look together jointly and see how we can all work for African unity. But I'm very happy to be on the show. I'm happy to be your guest and PITA's guest, and look forward to listening so that I can also be able to give some input that hopefully assists us in moving forward with catalyzing action for youth development in our continent. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna go back to Mr. Kefilwe Mukwena. Is he still with us? I can't see him anymore.
It's you.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm just gonna hand over back to you to tackle the topic for the day in catalyzing action for youth development. I think I'm a bit losing him, or are you guys losing me?
I am here.
You. I'm also here. I think we're losing Martha.
Are you guys losing me?
Yeah, I don't see you, but I think you can continue.
Waving at you, Martha. Does it work?
Oh, okay. You? Yes. I'm handing over to Kefilwe Mukwena to tackle the topic for the day as our first guest speaker. Yes.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I mean, again, thanks a lot, colleagues. Thanks to partner for the invitation. I think for me, when I was looking at the topic, I tried and thought about the daily experiences of a young person in the continent, and I wanted to bring the pragmatic type of discussion to the topic, and begin to basically look at the whole topic. And for me, the important words or the topic was investment was quite important for me. I looked at also inspiring and opportunities for young people across the continent. I thought, if I looked at this word, what is it that I wanted to discuss first? And the first word that came to my mind for me was the word skill. Before we begin to talk about inspiring, before we begin to talk about motivating, we really need to look at what is skill, because young people in the continent essentially need skills for them to be economically viable. They need skills for them to sell something. People will invite you or would want to work with you or want to establish and implement a project because they believe you have a certain skill. There is something that you're selling. And I thought, let me look at the definition of it. And it says a skill is the ability to do something. So it means what we essentially are looking for, we're looking for young people who are competent, young people who are able to do something both great or both difficult, or even if it's just implementable. So we need young people to be skilled. Because these words, motivation and inspiring, are big words that on day-to-day basis, young people lose them. Because how do I become motivated when I'm unemployed? How do I become motivated when there is gloom and doom in my life? We look at the stats in South Africa of youth unemployment. It's shocking. It's above. People are even argue that it's as much as 70%. But our stat was telling us that it's in the 60s. So really telling me that we're dealing with young people who are not inspired. We are dealing with young people who have accepted that there is no opportunities for me in this continent and in my country. And I thought, then what is it that you need to harness your skill? You need time and you need investment. So you need to go to school, or you need to go to an institution, or you need to go to any environment to begin to harness your skill. But in order for you to harness your skill, someone needs to invest for you. So someone needs to invest for me. On an individual scale, the person who might be obligated or contracted to assist me to be a skilled young person are perhaps my parents, my grandmother, or whoever that is my parents. But on a national scale, our government needs to invest on young people. And this is for me where the word investment needs to look at. For the longest time, in the continent, we have seen that many young people are becoming despondent on a day-to-day basis because there's no opportunities for young people, because there's no space for you as a young person to express your talent, so that you are able to viably sell the skill, which is you get it over time and through investment. And then I put, so the responsibility. So who has to take this responsibility? Previously, I would have said the person who's supposed to take this responsibility is the government, and because they need to create policies that are user-friendly for a young person. As a young person, when I completed my matric, and I have to say I didn't do that well in my matric. And so maybe that's why I sometimes think that's why I struggle to get funding at the university level. I didn't even have other opportunities, or did not know of other opportunities. I could have gone to a TVET that I known if there was a TVET. That TVET could have funded my fees had the government, invested that money for me to go to NSFAS and say, perhaps you could be very good in bricklaying, perhaps you could be a good technician, perhaps you could be a great, whatever skill that we want to impart to you, so that we are able to sell it and live a better life. I looked and I thought, okay, the second thing that I looked at was, education. So our education in the continent, in a lot of time, geared in wearing a tie. I'm glad to see Prof not wearing a tie today. Defeating those narratives. In order to be seen as a leader in society, in order to be seen as a worker, in order to be seen as a breadwinner, you have to wear a tie. And that is the fundamental problem, because then it means we exclude things such as doing great with your hands. We exclude this. We exclude, that you can still have a sustainable life, taking care of your family by building things. You can be a builder and take care of your family. You can be a mechanical engineer or a mechanic in general in the community and still take care of your family. Everyone in my family, when I matriculated, wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor. A lawyer because maybe I talk a lot. Others said to me, because you are smart, you must be a doctor, So it seems as if we are selling a narrative that smart people have to go through the degree route. And that for me is a problem, because then it begins to do the inverse. So young people don't become inspired because, I passed with 40% or 60% or 50%. Therefore, from my matric up until I die, I'm seen as a useless person, because the systems that our government has not put in place. In Germany, a young guy who works at a company that does, nails, just nails, earns enough money to buy himself a car, a house, and take care of the family. Not everyone in Germany is a genius, isn't it? Not everyone is a doctor. In fact, they're in industrial. So we need to look at that. But for us to want to even talk about being an industrial country, we need to change our education. We need to now begin to talk about the narrative of saying not everyone in a class must be a doctor, not everyone in a class must be, an academic, and begin to sell that narrative that indeed you can take care of your family without, being only academic. The other thing that I looked at was, for inspiration, because there is no. As a young person, it's been very difficult to see any systems that seek to empower young people, both in South Africa and both in the continent. And I'll give an example. We are exporting minerals. I don't think anyone comes closer to this continent in terms of exporting the mineral. We probably have all the minerals in the world that you can think of in the whole continent. And some of the minerals are still yet to be found, by the way. And you then have us giving mining rights to Chinese companies. You have us giving rights to American companies. My question is then, are we then saying we need to outsource skilling young people on these multinational companies? If you go to a lot of African countries, you pick up that the Chinese owning a lot of, for example, minerals, and the Chinese have not been a dominant powerhouse for the last 20 years. They've recently been, coming to power, but they are now taking most of our minerals. So what is and when the Chinese come to South Africa or come to DRC, we know that they bring their own labor. We know that they make sure that they come with people that are either skilled in China or semi-skilled or under-skilled in China. So the Chinese don't necessarily bring all engineers. They are bringing a Kifilomoko who might have dropped out in grade 11, who might have dropped out in grade 9. And this Kifilomoko is going to be trained in DRC. He's going to be a supervisor in DRC. After the contract ends, he's going to go back in DRC or stay in DRC and go back to China, or stay in DRC. Now he's a skilled labor. Now we see him as an entrepreneur because he's got access to funding because he's Chinese. And so already things that we're supposed to be utilizing as platforms to empower young people, we're making them multinationals. We're giving it to them for free. Not even saying to companies, we know that maybe you have experts, and I don't know, I'll put it in brackets, maybe you are expert in extracting minerals, but you need to go 50-50 with our country. 50% is owned by us, 50% is owned by you because you are bringing resources. And therefore, in that 50%, we are saying the labor of that mine that is being established, it has to be 75% young people. We don't even give them those clear rules. We talk about CSR, in the corner, you donate, 4%, you make sure that you take of these mining communities. If you go to a lot of South African mining communities, they are a shambles. They are an embarrassment. It seems that nothing is being extracted there, because those communities die. It becomes even worse after the mines have extracted whatever that they wanted and they've left that community. They are not sustainable at all. I can count several of them. You can go to your Carltonville. You will see the poverty that happens there. And so I thought I should just give a background as a young person, my conflicting, perspective within my. So I don't know if, Martha, you want me to continue on one item, what needs to be done, or what should we do, or should I give Prof and then I will follow up.
All right, it's fine. We can, what is for solutions and what needs to be done, we'll move them to our question and answer sessions. I've already jotted down some of those, and I've received some of the questions that we can move on to, so that you can unpack how we can do this, the solutions to such problems. And I highlighted on the policies that you mentioned, which is very, very, very important. I think that's where also organizations like PICTA come in to push for policy changes in government and inclusion of young people, not only young people, but everybody who is in entrepreneurship. I would love to welcome Professor Mthunzi Mdwaba for his presentation on catalyzing action for youth development in Africa. He is an AU endorsed International Labour Organization Director General for 2022. Thumbs crossed, we are here and we are so much ready to have his expertise at international level, which will be a great fruit for Africa, for the young, for the old, for everybody who is in the entrepreneurship space, who is an employed person running a business. I believe that he is somebody that we need up there. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Martha. I think before you hand over to me, I just need to know, how much time would you want me to speak for? It will help for me to manage my time and to manage your time. How long do you want me to speak for? Because I couldn't get clarity from Mr. Mdwaba Jr.
Yes, for your timing. All right, it's fine. I think we do have 30 minutes, so you can dance around that.
Okay, so 30 minutes is long, so I'm going to try and be shorter than 30 minutes so that we can hopefully have a conversation. Because, for me, I'd rather we have a conversation if possible. It feels better when I keep getting you to cut in. So if you want to cut in at any time, cut in.
Right.
So that I clarify things and I can give it a little bit of an interactive kind of situation if possible. The more provocative for me, the better. I don't mind provocation at all. And I think I want to start by saying to Mr. Mkwena that I haven't worn a tie since 1996 when I was running the music industry. That was back in the time of TKZ and Brenda Fassie, and I was running the industry at the time. Things like Booga Love. I went to run a music industry studio. I ran a record company, and Kabelo Mabalane's first album, Pantsula for Life, came from my studio. So I then felt, having come from that environment, that a tie was a bit restricting for me. And I also believed that, having gone to school, I had gone to be freed and to be liberated as an African. And as an African, I need to remain true to who I am, my roots and my life. And I don't know where a tie came from. I think it's part of our problem in our continent, because I'm not aware of any ties that came from Africa. But be that as it may, I want to be grateful for the time that we have with Martha hosting and facilitating us. I've already thanked PICTA for the invitation and congratulated PICTA for the work that it does. I also want to perhaps just say that I've made about 3-4 presentations in the last 2 weeks. So when I was trying to decide, and they're all linked to this topic, you see, because October was Productivity Month. Some of you may or may not be aware. So I chair Productivity South Africa, which is an entity of the Department of Employment and Labor in South Africa. And so I had to do a presentation for at our Productivity Summit, I think around the 28th, 29th of October. And you know, some of the facts, some of the points that I'm going to be using here, I had to use there. And then I had to do a presentation to Parliament about a week or so ago. And that topic was on just transition. And it was entitled, "Is it a pipe dream in light of the slow economic growth?" So, but that was, of course, specifically within the South African context, that just transition, but I did take it into the African continent as a whole. Then I was a keynote speaker a few days ago at Auda NEPAD. I was invited by NEPAD on a topic unlocking the potential of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement for an economic recovery that leads to jobs. And again, the focus was on the youth. So I found myself a little bit in a difficult spot here. I wasn't quite sure how to structure this one because it's very similar. And I was hoping that no one attended any of the three presentations because I'm going to jump up and down from those presentations to make my points. I also do want to mention, for purposes of context, that up until June of this year, I was the vice president of the International Organization of Employers. And as the vice president of the International Organization of Employers, I was then also the vice chair of the International Labour Organization in Switzerland. Now, I need to unpack both before I proceed, even though I think I did the last time, but I can't assume that other people were listening the last time. We have the same people. So the International Organization of Employers is the largest private sector business organization in the world. It has 150 business organizations in over 150 countries. And so as the vice president of the IOE, I represented just over 50 million companies in the world, you know, from Geneva. And then, of course, you automatically become the vice chair of the International Labour Organization. The International Labour Organization is loosely described by me as the mother of the workplace. It is responsible for anything to do with work, anything you can think of about work, in your radio station, in my home on a virtual screen, whether people have occupational safety and health or not, whether people should work 8 hours or not, whether there should be child labor or not. Incidentally, there's a child labor conference in the country on the 18th and the 19th for all African countries to come and talk about child labor. And we have standards in the ILO. And those of you who follow the ILO would know that child labor has reached universality in the sense that all 187 members of the ILO have signed this standard, are ratifying this standard so that it becomes part of their law. And so within this context, again, I'm giving this context because until 2017, when I became the vice president and the vice chair, there'd never been an African ever in the position that I occupied. I think that's very important. So when you mention, Martha, that I've now been nominated to be a candidate for the DG of the International Labour Organization, it's also quite important for you and the listeners to know that there's never been a DG of the ILO from Africa or from Asia since the ILO was born in 1919. Okay, so that's the context. I think that's a very important context because I might say things and then people think, what is he talking about? You know, and then I keep running away. And I know I used to be in the ICT sector, and the ICT sector is notorious for acronyms. You know, everything is an acronym. And then you end up not knowing what people are talking about and they lose you. And so I want to be sure that I don't lose anybody. And lastly, perhaps very importantly, you mentioned that I'm a SADC tripartite endorsed candidate as well as an African Union endorsed candidate. But I'm also the chair of the South African Norwegian Association, which is very important for business between the two countries, between Norway and South Africa. And we normally have envoys of the president joining us as guests, and the ambassador of Norway has joined us a few times as a guest. So all of this having given us a context, then already takes 5 minutes of your time. So now I'm left on 25 minutes. Now, so on the 25 minutes that is left, I thought when I mentioned the just transition that I had to talk about at Parliament over 2 weeks or so ago, I must say that I thought that it is important to, again, take it to its very basic 101 level to say, what do you mean by a transition? When you talk about a transition, what do we mean? Everybody knows we talk about a just transition. We talk about transitioning from the old to the fourth industrial revolution, to beyond that and the future of work. But a transition presupposes a change from something to another, right? So, so when you talk about a something, for me, it has to be substantial something, not just something that is meaningless to another something, right? So, and it presupposes a just transition, a vision-led, unifying and place-based set of principles, processes, and practices that build economic and political power to shift from what you would refer to as an extractive economy to a regenerative economy, approaching production and consumption cycles holistically and in a waste-free manner, right? And the principle of a just transition is that a health economy and a clean environment can and should coexist, yeah? The process for achieving this vision should be a fair one that should not cost workers or community residents their health, the environment, jobs, or economic assets, and any losses that may happen should be fairly compensated. Now, I raise this because, you know, we talk a lot about doing things differently, about moving from one section to another, and how our people are going to benefit from this. And the question for me, and the title at the time that we were given by Parliament was, is it a pipe dream to have this economic recovery? Is it possible to have a just transition when there's such slow economic recovery and so on? And then when I looked at the other topic of unlocking the potential for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, incidentally, the Secretary General of the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement is a South African, Mr. Wamkele Mnene. I think I may have mentioned it the last time. If I did, you'll forgive me. I suspect it might be wise for PICTA to invite him, Mr. Wamkele Mnene, to talk about what plans he has for Africa, because anything you do with trade is going to be run via his office. So I would recommend that you do that. And then I then Martha, started diving into a conversation about, you know, all kinds of things that are attitudinal in their nature. So, you know, I was listening to Mr. Mkwena talking about skills. And you know, you can't manage any transition as well, any just transition, without managing a skills transformation and a skills evolution, but I would say a skills revolution in this context, because nothing we have done has worked so far. Nothing the world is doing is working for those in developing countries, for those who are marginalized. I mean, so for me, it's not just about the youth, although we are focusing on youth development today in Africa, but it is about those who are marginalized, and women have always been far more marginalized than men, irrespective of your color or your sex or whatever it might be. So when you are a youthful woman, you then would be in a much worse situation. So when you deal with all of that, we need to be saying to ourselves, what is it that we should be doing differently? What is it that we should do in another manner? Because evidently we are not making progress. And I like, you know, when you are in the ILO, you like to repeat stuff. So you'll forgive me that I keep repeating things, because it is by repeating things that things stick. And so I like to talk about the quotation ascribed to Einstein, which was to say, you know, it is a test of insanity. It is insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I add my own words, getting the same disastrous outcome. Those are my words. And yet, you keep wanting to do the same thing, hoping for a different outcome. Now, that's insanity. And the world seems to be doing that. And why is the world doing that? The world is doing that because it's full of old people like me who like the sound of their voices. It's full of echo chambers. It's full of people who do not want to let the likes of Mr. Mokoena come in, the likes of you, Martha, to come in, because, you know, you're coming to spoil the party. I mean, what are you doing coming in as young people with fresh ideas? What are we going to do? You're going to retire us, you see? So, and this is the very short-sighted view that people have. And they stop people from coming in and doing better and helping us and mixing wisdom with freshness of perspective, and mixing wisdom with innovation and creativity that comes from our young people. So I then decide that for me, it's okay to talk about these skills and transformations and transitions, innovation, and all of these lovely things. The future of work, that's no longer future in my view. It's been with us for a while. The fourth industrial revolution is not my favorite concept. I mentioned the last time, because, you know, I don't care whether it's the fifth or the sixth or the seventh industrial revolution. What I care about is that my mother, who is in the rural villages, and the people in that community are able to be transitioned from one platform to another, are able to have decency and dignity. So whether it's 4 or 5 or 6, I don't think it's important to them. I don't think they even know what they are in. I don't think we even know whether they are in 4. I don't think they are. I think they're in 2 or 2.5. So they still have to get to 3. And so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 may not be important. What is important is, how do we ensure that as we move forward, we get them to have a quantum leap to go to the point of decency and dignity, whatever that platform might be. So then for me, it takes me then to this attitudinal change, how we need to change our way of doing things, leadership and implementation, the issue of having flawed economic structures within the African continent, the issue of scratching the informality surface. I mentioned the last time, Martha, that I have a huge fetish these days with informality. A fetish, I mean an obsession, a fixation with informality. Because the majority of our countries in Africa are 65 to 90% informal, the informal sector. So the majority of our people who eke out an economic existence cannot be counted. You can't point to them in the fiscus. You can't say, no, I know those people, they do X, because you can't find them, right? And so all we do is talk about how we want to transition them from informality to formality, which I find very patronizing, because I'm not quite sure they want to be transitioned. And I've questioned before on this platform and many platforms, how you hope to transition 95% into 5% or 85% into 15%, just because it's a Western methodology that you brought from somewhere else. So we find a situation where, in our collaboration and coexistence with our colleagues in other parts of the world, in other continents, instead of saying to them, hey, there are things we can learn from you, but at the same time, there are things we can learn from us. So instead of talking about transitioning people from informality to formality, which you know nothing about, because you have no informality in your developed world, don't give us theories about how to migrate and transmit and transition people when you don't even know, you've never seen the face of informality. We as Africans and Latin Americans and some Asians know what the face looks like of informality. So, and we need to talk to people and consult with them and say, hey, we want you to be part of this lovely infrastructure we are building. We want you to be part of these hubs and incubators and innovation hubs and all the things we are doing that are beautiful. But in doing so, we can't do it when we don't know who you are. We don't know how to find you. So how can we work with you in informality without putting up our noses up in the air and being snobbish about wanting to move you from where you are without understanding whether, in fact, you want to be moved where you are or not, right? That for me is patronizing. That is disrespectful. You can't do that, especially when you don't understand the situation that other people live in. So those are the things for me that I think need to be questioned. When you talk about a lack of appreciation for what productivity means, there is no understanding what productivity means. When we talk about total factor productivity, people don't understand what you're talking about. They rush into conclusions of thinking you're only talking about labor productivity, that you want to cut costs, that you want to retrench workers. No. Productivity is not about that. Productivity is about all the elements that go into inputs that are actually supposed to feed your outputs at the end of the day. So when you are talking productivity, you are talking about how do you enhance your situation in economic activity so that you can do everything you do tomorrow better than you did yesterday, right? That's what productivity is about. You do today what you did yesterday better and even better tomorrow. That's productivity. Now, who in his or her right mind does not want to do things better tomorrow? Who? I can't find a person who will tell me that I don't want to do better. I don't want to improve. I don't want to bring more profit. I don't want to bring more decency into the world and so on. And the only way you do it is by doing things this way. So you talk about productivity and you talk about Kaizen. Kaizen is what we call continuous improvement in the school of productivity. Kai means change. Zen means good. Change is good. So what's the problem? Why are we not doing that is good so that we can impact our people? So for me, I start to question all these issues because I say we have a pre-COVID flawed situation, a pre-existing flawed economic structures that we've had. But the COVID has revealed that they are flawed. Now, if we are to catalyze any action for youth development in Africa, we can't do it whilst we're using the same stuff we used before. We're supposed to have known that. But if we didn't know that, the COVID has demonstrated it to us that actually we lost. We are continuing to hope for different outcomes using the same crazy things we've done before that have not given us the outcomes we're looking for that are positive for our people, for our young people, for social justice to be realized in our lifetimes. So when I look at, for example, the Centenary Declaration, I've mentioned it before, but again, for context, I'm going to go back so that people know what I'm talking about. In 2019, the ILO celebrated 100 years. Okay? So it will be 103 next year when I become the DG, because I have every intention to win. So I'm a candidate, but I'm winning. So I'm going to talk about me being the DG rather than, thinking about it. So I've got competitors and I'm happy with the competitors and I respect them, but please, God help them because I intend to win, right? So when you talk about that, and then in 103 years, we will never have had an African at the top of this august organization that deals with the world of work. And in 2019, we celebrated its 100 years. What was important about that document? What was important about that document is that since 1919, there had never been any official mention of productivity in an official instrument of the ILO. That for me is scandalous. How do you for 100 years talk about work, but you don't talk about productivity? I mean, it's crazy, right? And every time you want to talk about productivity, it sounds like you're talking about stuff that is sacrilege. It's almost like a swear word. It's like you may not talk about it, right? Why? Because unfortunately, in 1919, there were very different circumstances that brought about the birth of the ILO, and that brought the birth of the UN in 1945. It was the First World War and the Second World War, right? So people are still caught in a time warp of ideological fixation. And so people feel very comfortable to give you ideology. What is ideology? It's whether I'm a capitalist, you're a communist, and the other one is a socialist, or you're a social democrat. Those labels don't matter anymore. What matters is the content that we should be using to be able to ensure that our people have change that gives them impact and that gives them the jobs and the enablement that Mr. Mokoena was talking about. The enablement by government to ensure that you are able to be an entrepreneur who builds an enterprise, and then that enterprise becomes sustainable, right? These are the important things. But unfortunately, as people, we are happy to have labels. We love labels. We love to say Martha is this, Martha is that, because once you've described Martha as a label, you've finished Martha. Martha may not be able to speak, right? Martha is now persona non grata because Martha is not to be seen as anything other than the label that you have bestowed on Martha. God forbid, who are you to do that? And we do that because we allow some of these people in authority who are not leaders, okay? The people in authority, like the most of the ministers and people in the world, who all of a sudden become so important that we don't know how to tell them when they're making a mess, right? And for the first time also in that centenary iteration, not only did we mention productivity, it was mentioned 11 times, but we also mentioned exactly what Mr. Mokoena was talking about, an enabling environment for entrepreneurship and sustainable enterprises. It is in that document. So have a look at it, Mr. Mokoena, later. It's a 4-page document. It's not too much to read. Go to the ILO, type centenary declaration, download, and read it, right? And then you also would see in that very document that we talk about the role of the private sector in the creation of jobs, in the productive creation of jobs. And in that same year, we then had an Abidjan declaration in December 2019, where we talked about unleashing potential for growth and prosperity in Africa. We always use good words. That's one thing you can't criticize us about. We use very good words, very positive, constructive, evoking, emotion evoking words. But the content, my colleagues, is what is missing. The implementation is what is missing. The bringing of the youth to be part of the solution is what is missing, because we want to tell the youth what it is they need without bringing the youth to tell us what they need and work with us in bringing up what it is they need, right? So you'll see in the Abidjan Declaration that it talks about an African decent work agenda. It talks about priorities. It talks about building on a human-centered approach to the future of work. It talks about making decent work a reality for Africa's youth. Making it a reality for Africa's youth, developing the skills you talked about, Mr. Mokoena, pathways and productivity for a brighter future in Africa, transforming informal and rural economy for decent work, and respecting the standards that we have within the ILO, promoting social dialogue and ensuring gender equality. Gender equality, we talked about it for that forever, gender equality and gender parity. But I'm sure the COVID also demonstrated how chauvinistic we still are, how men still think they are a better species than women, in spite of using the right rhetoric forever, right? And then it talks about strengthening the capacities of all people to benefit from the opportunities that the world of work provides. Investing in human capital by strengthening education, skills, upskilling, lifelong learning, leveraging technology, and it goes, right? Now, when you look at all of this, some of you will have also heard of Sustainable Development Goals. Yes. The predecessor for Sustainable Development Goals was something called Millennium Development Goals, if you remember before.
Yeah.
They disastrously failed, as the SDGs are to disastrously fail unless we do something different. Not like Einstein said, we do the same stuff. Okay, so 2030 is a myth, in my view, that all of us have been sold unless we do things that are different. The 2063 African Union agenda is a myth unless we do things differently. So when, for me, I talk about all these things, yes, it is a pipe dream. Unless, and it's unless in capital letters, unless we turn around and go in a different direction. And we, in going around in a different direction, must be led by a different group of people, not the same ones who brought the problems. How can you be the architect of the solution when you brought us the problem? How is it going to happen? Because we know how humans are, how egotistical we are. Who do you expect is going to say, no, I erred, sorry, I made a mistake? We don't do that too well, us, especially not patriarchal men from Africa who are going to say, I am at fault. It's not going to happen. So when you look at the SDGs, and there's 17 of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that what we are talking about now, in terms of economic activity, would be SDG 8, okay? That's what I work with in the ILO. I work with SDG 8. That's what I work with. That was Department of Employment and Labor, work with SDG 8. SDG 8 is decent work and economic activity. That's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
But we must remember that the SDGs work in a partnership of 17. There's 17 SDGs. Never, if you forget anything I've said today, never forget that these 17 SDGs, with different people having responsibilities and accountabilities and ownership within the United Nations multilateral environment, and all of us as social partners in society, must always know you can't divorce the one from the others, right?
That's right.
SDG 1 says there shall be no poverty. SDG 1. SDG 2 says zero hunger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And then they go on and on and on. 3 is good health, and 4 is quality education. And then 17 talks about partnerships for the goals, right? Now, let me give you some very upsetting news. So, to be able to fund the SDGs per annum, Africa needs $1 trillion. $1 trillion per annum to fund the SDGs and make them realizable by 2030. Of course, this was when the SDGs were conceived. So now we're already late with the COVID. So now we might even need more than 1.3 trillion. Okay, 1.3 trillion was on the basis that everything was starting well. We were moving along. We did not have an interruption called the global financial crisis in 2009. We didn't have the COVID pandemic in 2019. You know, you would need 1.3 trillion. Okay. And at the lowest figure given to us by the Brookings Institute, if you don't do 1.3 trillion, at the very lowest, if we are just to have the bare bones of the SDGs, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need a $420 billion per annum. Okay? And so far, how much have we been getting? We've been getting just under $50 billion in the last 6 years. So you need 420 at the lowest per annum, 1.3 at the highest per annum, but we have only realized $50 billion in the last 6 years, right? As things stood before the COVID, because I think this has changed. So I'm giving you the pre-COVID scenario, which some people have given a post-COVID scenario, but we don't know when post-COVID is, so it's tricky, right? So the pre-COVID scenario was that there would only be 3 SDGs achieved by 2030. 3 out of 17. Which are these 3? 15, 16, and 17. 15 is life on land. Okay, yeah. I don't know if there'll be any life on land because we'll probably all perish, but it says life on land will still be there. And 6 is peace, justice, and strong institutions, which for me are worrying as long as we have poverty at the number 1 and hunger at number 2 and no economic activity at 8. And then 17, partnership for the goals. Now, as things stand, there's a feeling that there will only be 1 that is achieved in 2030 post the COVID, right? And as we talk about all of this, as we talk about skilling, and we talk about upskilling, and we talk about reskilling, so my point today, young colleagues who are listening, and other colleagues who are my age who are listening, who must move out of the way for the young colleagues to do things, is that without leadership change, without embracing of productivity, without attitudinal change, without a revisitation of the previously flawed economic structures before the COVID, which got worse during the COVID, there is no realization of social justice in the world. There's no catalyzing action for any youth development in Africa unless we change, right? And so when you look at all the mega trends that are at play today, and when you talk about mega trends, I must mention them because I'm sure we know what they are, but let me mention them so that we're on the same page when we have our conversation. Technological advances is one of the mega trends of today. One of the biggest disruptors in the world is technological advancement, hence the future of work and all these other labels. Changing demographics that are changing all the time. People crossing the border between South Africa and Zimbabwe and Zambia and Angola and so on and so on. Rwanda and Ghana, Nigeria, things are changing all the time. Yes, we have a good dividend of youth. About 70% in Africa are youth. But unfortunately, 70% of that 70% is unemployed or is unable to create work of this youth. And then you talk about peace and social justice as being an SDG that will be achieved as SDG 16. I don't know. Because if I was the youth, I would get very upset and I would do something to the old people, right? So I don't know where the peace is going to be, right? The third one is climate change. The fourth one is globalization. It's the fourth mega trend. You can't do anything without dealing with the climate issues that we have. And you can't do anything without the very inequitous globalization we have. South Africa, as we know, has the highest inequality now in the world, right? And in terms of competitiveness in the world, out of 64 now measured countries, South Africa is now number 62. We used to be number 44 10 years ago. We're now number 62 in terms of the least competitive economy scale, right? And so as we move forward, we then clearly have to find a way of reorganizing the way we work. We have to find a way of saying, how do we do this differently? So when we look at the socio-economic issues facing Africa, as we talk about catalyzing action, and I'm coming to a close, Martha, because now I'm left with 5 minutes, I think, 6 minutes. So I need to come to a close because it's also important for you to have some very vibrant discussions and people have an opportunity to ask questions and make comments. Socio-economic issues, even though I've covered them already, but let me repeat. Low economic growth, lack of decisive and bold leadership, lack of decisive and bold leadership. If you were not on a radio station with young people and many people listening, I would use other words, but I'm going to leave it to your imagination what I would have said when I'm talking about bold leadership. Okay? I'm sure everybody here has a very visual mind, knows what I would have wanted to say. Lack of implementation, low productivity, high levels of informality, unemployment, especially for the youth, child and forced labor, governance gaps, gender gaps, poverty, low social protection coverage because our people don't have social protection, unsustainable rural-urban migration because we're not doing anything at the rural peri-urban environment. So people have got to come to the cities. And the funny thing, if you look at South Africa, for example, one of the biggest failures of the new democracy that people are not looking at is that in 1994, when we took over, we never changed the spatial town planning you have in our country, where people are still structured in an apartheid manner, where they still have to wake up at 4 a.m. to take a taxi to come into the city and get to the city at 7 a.m., get to work at 8, work until 5, get onto a taxi again, get home at 9 p.m. You must still cook for your kids. You must still prepare homework with them. And then you wonder why Black people can't help their kids with homework. I mean, how are we going to help our kids with homework when you still have to get home at 9 p.m. and cook a meal and wash and do everything and then be up again to travel at 4 the following morning? And so as you look at the COVID impact, there was an ILO monitor report that came out 2 weeks ago. It says the global working hours in 2021 are estimated to remain significantly below the level attained in the last quarter of 2019. at minus 4.5%, which is equivalent to 131 million full-time jobs. In the first quarter of this year, minus 4.8%, 140 million full-time jobs. In the second quarter, minus 4.7%, which is an equivalent of 137 million jobs. And if you look at the global labor productivity growth, it has slowed down significantly with negative growth in low and lower middle class, lower middle income countries. As a result, the productivity gap between developing and advanced economies has grown. So you thought you had inequality? Listen to this one now. We have more inequality now between advanced economies and developing economies because of the COVID. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work this out. Because when you talk about you need running clean water to be sanitized, we don't have that in the majority of our places. You need to have social distancing of 1.5 meters to 2 meters. Other people's shacks are 2 meters, right? So you need to talk about infrastructure. We are on StreamYard now, and Zoom, and Cisco this, and Microsoft that. The majority of our people can't be on these platforms, people.
Exactly.
So things are getting worse every day, right? So in 2020, the average worker in a high-income country produced, listen to this number, 17.5 times more output per hour than the average worker in a low-income country. 17.5 times in the low to middle income compared to the high, right? And this gap in 2021 has increased to 18, the biggest difference since 2005, okay? So, yes. So now, on this note, you would say, so how do we move on? Well, I've told you, we need to change. For the African Continental Free Trade Area, for example, to work as a free trade area, there are things we must do. We must go beyond rhetoric into action. We need to accelerate intra-African trade in Africa, but you can't accelerate intra-African trade when we are not doing anything about the things that have been wrong all along. When we're not doing anything about the visas being a problem within Africa more than going to Europe and the US. Just to come to Tanzania, you have problems with your visa, and yet you're in South Africa, or vice versa, right? And so when you look at it going forward and creating bigger and integrated regional market for African products, we need this change. We need to find a way of improving conditions for forming regional value chains and integrating to global value chains. We need to find a way of allowing consumers to have access to cheaper imported products from other African countries. All of this is critical. And I'm going to stop there, Martha. There's a lot else I can say. But I think for me, it was to provoke a conversation and to show you in a very realistic manner that as much as I'm a patriot of South Africa and a patriot of Africa, and we want to see all things patriots want to see, without a reality check, we are also lying to ourselves. Without a reality check, we are not going to do these things unless we all find a way to get up and make sure we stay up and make sure that we continue moving forward. So on that note, I am going to end it and say to you that there are 3 ways, for example, that I can just add for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement to also succeed, to help us in catalyzing action for youth development. A commitment and strategic focus on industrialization, okay, which you cannot do without dealing with informality and the productivity problem that I've talked about. Lots need to be done. 2, increasing marginal share in global exports. This requires a recalibration of how we have done things previously and demands that leadership, not talking people in authority here, not talking people who are given titles. That's not leadership, okay? When you make a person a leader and you say, my leader, be sure that's your leader, not just a guy who's standing in front of you, right? And 3, investing in connectivity and infrastructure. This is easier said than done, of course, because we have to deal with the elephant in the room in the form of informality. So I end on that point, and thank you very much. Asante sana. Merci beaucoup for those who are listening from West Africa. And muito obrigado if we have some Portuguese within the African continent. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Professor Mthunzi Mdwaba. That was really a mouthful, and I really love how you have managed to tackle the topic and touch everything that needed to be touched on. I do have a question on change. You said for us to move forward, for us to realize Agenda 2063, we need to change. Who needs to change? Us, the young people, what do we need to do for this change to happen? Women, what do we need for the change to happen? Is it leadership? Is it the whole continent? Where do we start with the change?
Well, I said we need to change, all of us. So the master-servant relationship is a very interesting relationship. You can never expect the master to change if the servant doesn't change.
That's right.
So the master can continue seeing you as somebody who's on the same level as the master, if there's any such a thing. But if you continue to be servile and to continue to want to treat the master as somebody higher than you, there's a problem. So what other people would refer to in the dictionary as dietitianship. You know, dietitianship is when you treat people like gods. You elevate them. So immediately they are named as the minister of something. They become a being to you, right? And all of a sudden, you have an inability to tell that being that that being is lost and confused, right? And most of beings then end up surrounding themselves with very useless people who have no idea what they're doing, because they have no idea what they're doing themselves, these useless beings. But because they're in authority, they continue to have dominion over you, right? So we all have to change. There is no way a man is going to stop being chauvinistic and abusing you as a woman until such time that as a woman, you're going to stand up not only to go outside and show that you were beaten up yesterday, but that actually you're going to go and report it to the police and mobilize other people, men and women, to shame that person and not keep saying, sorry, he made a mistake. He smacked me once, he won't smack me again. He smacked me twice, he won't smack me for a third time. So all of us need to have a consciousness change. We all need to change. There is no way the developed world, the advanced economies are going to change until the developing economies change. There is no way, Martha, Africa is going to get anywhere, because we are taught in our homes that as Africans, we must be humble and modest.
That's true.
So we are so modest to the point of heightened stupidity, where as Africans, we don't say, no, man, you know, I can see you come from another country, but I can do this better than you. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to try and be nice and say, well, you know, let's look at how you do it. No. In your indigenous situation, sometimes you know better than the person who comes from outside. So why are you being modest and not saying to the person, sorry, it's not done like this in my home. We do it like this. And if you help me in doing it like this, I think we can come up with a solution together. But you can't now bring your own thing that was manufactured somewhere in the Netherlands and you bring it to me in Eswatini and you expect it to work the same way, right? So there's a huge shift that the world needs. And the young people are in a better position to do this than us. And we also need to get rid of these old colonialist kind of ways of thinking, because, you know, it's ingrained in us. We are highly disrespectful of each other as Africans. Highly. It's a colonialist thing. The lighter your complexion, the better you know. And we say we don't believe it, but we do. I can assure you we do. We judge people. And when somebody does not speak good Swahili or good Zulu or good Portuguese, we judge them.
That's right.
Right? In fact, we want them to speak English. We don't want them to speak those languages. right? Their own languages. So until such time that we can be proud of who we are as a people and take ownership of the solutions we need, because we know our challenges, it gets very difficult, therefore, to create a solution. There is, the ICT sector talks about solutions. In this sector, you talk about a solution.
Yeah.
But when I used to run a training company, because I built a training company in the ICT sector back in the whenever it was, 2002 and whatever, and I built the best training company in the sub-Saharan continent, right? But I used to say to my people, you can't go to a client with a preconceived solution. That's not possible. First, you must listen. First, you must hear what the problem is. You can't come and say, no, I've got Oracle in this bag. I've got Cisco in that bag. I've got Workday in that bag. I've got Microsoft in that one. I've got open source. I'm sorry. First, you need to understand what the problems. I hope I'm answering you, Martha. Martha, I think you are muted.
So sorry about that. You also mentioned implementation, but I want to pose this question to Mr. Mkwena here. Young people have a lot of ideas. They've come together, some, starting businesses together, others with all these entrepreneurship projects lined up. How successful is the implementation of those ideas? What's the hindrance? Did we lose him, or did we?
If I were to hear the last part, you said the question is how successful is the implementation, isn't it, Martha?
Yes, where young people are concerned, as groups, as individuals, the group of people that you have worked with, how successful is the implementation? Whether in terms of ideas or pushing for a policy change within governments, where entrepreneurship is concerned, how successful is that?
So it's no secret. It's really, I mean, it's a pity I don't have much of research with that, but it's no secret if we look at the day-to-day life of young people that they are not that much successful. We know it's because if you look at predominantly all the spaces, if you look at entrepreneurship, if you look at tech companies, if you look at factories, you'll see that predominantly still all people who are taking up space. Does that mean young people are not innovative? No, it's just that, and I think Prof has just said it very nicely there, that there has been a behavior that as a young person, you must be humble, you must be apologetic in wanting, to achieve your goals. But I think also for me, and this is what I wanted to speak about my last part of the presentation, was that we also need to young people must begin to organize themselves. There is no one who's going to organize you. And this is what I learn on a day-to-day basis with many young people who are in the same space as me. You meet a young person in Malawi, you meet a young person in Mozambique, or even meet two young people in South Africa, but they're not working together. It seems as if because we have absorbed that culture of opposition. So young people are not organized, and until we organize ourselves, it is going to be easier for us to go to the table and say to the people at the table, we are not asking for a space. We are demanding to be part of space. I, for example, I've got a great friend of mine who usually says he does not subscribe to being called the future leader. He says, Kev, I'm a leader. You are a leader currently. This issue of us being called future leader, it seems as if it's a delaying tactic or delaying process to say, wait, young man, you'll be a leader. Wait, young man, you'll take position in the ICT sector. Wait, young man, until when? Until you're 55, that's when you're seen as a leader. And I think it's what again Prof was touching on in terms of confusing authority with leadership. There's so much of that, and so we then begin to think these guys who are in senior positions, ministers, they're all leaders. If you think about part of the issue for implementation for me, and I spoke about it earlier, and Prof touched it. When I said we must define education for ourselves now, we need to do away with that previous definition of education. And I spoke I wrote Prof very interestingly, skills revolution. What skills do we need now? What skills do I need now to lead society? And when you say leading society, to lead society in academia, to lead society in entrepreneurship, to lead society in labor, what formal skills do I need? Do I still need to read that 515-page written somewhere in Belgium? When we know that the informal sector, more than 62% of the informal sector in our continent is bringing income to families, I really do not need to be reading about that part of productivity. I'm supposed to be reading on how do I make sure that we advance using technology, using innovation, we advance what you call it now, productivity. We advance informal sector. And so for me, it's those things. How do I begin to be trained on entrepreneurship, but not only on a white collar, to say, you can mend shoes and make more money than Kifilo works at the bank. That's the type of young people beginning to organize themselves. So the biggest thing in implementation, there is no way where you're going to implement or have a successful implementation if you're not organized. Because you are already working against a system that is organized, that has set rules for the last 500 years. That is set rules. And that's why I even made an example of mining. I'll give a last example in South Africa, which for me doesn't make sense. You've got all these big, beautiful mines, big, when you see them, they've got these big machines. And then you currently have what you call the zamazamas. These guys who go and get and extract mining illegally, the whatever that is left. My issue is, it is a formal sector already that you have. If you've gone to the west of Johannesburg, Prof, you will see people selling, there's electricity, there's everything. Why aren't we beginning to utilize such spaces and say, no, it's fine. Let's begin to formalize this sector. Let's employ young people. Let's put health and safety, as Prof said, there. Go and extract whatever that is left. Here's the selling person. Let's refine those minerals and let's do jewelry. But instead, what we are doing, because the formal sector, which has been defined to us, is against that, we are told the foreign investors and all of these things. What is now beginning to happen is that you must go and shoot those people. Now we're promoting thuggery there. Now people are fighting amongst themselves. So it's these things that I think as young people we need to begin to organize ourselves and say, no. We also need to play a role in getting our minerals. And we're not negotiating. Because I think the space for negotiating is up. The space for in DRC, as I was preparing for this presentation, you've got about 90 million citizens who are living in absolute poverty. Yet they've got one of the best minerals in the world. Something for me doesn't make sense. How do you exclude a whole 90 million people? A whole 90 million people, because you are following a certain direction that was created for you. Young people must also stop being apologetic. I see myself as a leader in this sector, or in any sector, even in this platform. I don't see myself as less of Ubabumtama. I don't see myself as less of you, Martha. I see myself as a leader. And we need to begin to do that. Because once we begin to see ourselves as leaders, we will begin to act as leaders. We will begin to go to positions such as policy formulation. And say, this policy of yours of mining doesn't work. Last week, there was a mining in Cape Town. Who was it serving? Who was it really serving? They were talking about the minerals, the coal, and everything. I still have two younger brothers who are unemployed and probably unemployable. And so for me, all of these big Indaba mines and everything are not serving me. And so we need to go there and take the podium there and begin to have ownership. Then say, we are telling you that the Zamazamas, as much as you are saying they're illegal, these guys have a potential to do this, and you are able to include young people in these things. We need to begin to, as young people, again, take ownership. If you look at politics, we have adopted, even as young people, we have adopted that culture of patronage and corruption. So people who are now corrupt are people my age, at 33 and 34-year-olds. They subscribe to, there's no problem in driving these big cars, just work for it. But you can see that the culture is now coming to me. So it means already I'm now a type of a leader that is compromised. And so I think for me, those are the component that if we're going to go for implementation and we're going to gauge implementation, we really need to take on space. This thing of going individuals is not going to. And I think my last point is, it's either we create industries or we also participate in taking over the existing industries. There's nothing wrong as young people to begin to put innovation in agriculture. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong as young people to go and participate in the space of mining. It's our minerals, and we cannot be apologetic about that. And then we need to then begin to look as what Prof was saying, innovation. What can we bring? Because we know that digital space now, I don't know, post-COVID or, as people call it, but we really need to take off space now and say, we need to do things differently. How do we do things differently? I've got a friend now who was now telling me about UCT, for example, now has a metric training, so if you write your metric, you can go to UCT and do it online, 100%. So it means we need to begin to see as young people is how do we then utilize this pandemic, but also begin to create infrastructure. We cannot be talking about improving our infrastructure even the next 10 years. In the next 10 years, I will be 44 years old. And if I'll still be discussing that there's a problem in enrolling infrastructure in South Africa, clearly I'm part of the problem. I'll just pause for that for me.
Wow, thank you so much. I love the way you touch on especially on the mining industry. I come from a village where we live, and most of our income comes from that Zama type of setup. It's been happening for years, and it's one of the poorest villages. I don't even know if we're on the map. It's one of the poorest villages. There are no tarred roads. It's actually difficult to drive in that area.
What's your village? You must start by mentioning your village so it's on the map.
Okay. I come from a village called Mberevete Village. It's in Berengwa in the Midlands.
Okay.
So this area, the Midlands, we have a lot of gold. We have a lot of gold. This is well known. We actually have a lot of people going there just to say, this is my work. We wake up and we go to do the Zamazama. I used to go there to sell a pub and breakfast and stuff like that when I was 16. It was great. I made a lot of money out of it. So when you touched on formalizing it, it's something that touches me, because I had seen some of my uncles and people from the village, coming back with gold. Okay, that guy made a lot of money. He made a killing. But because it's not formalized, because there is not much involved from maybe government or the community coming together, they are not doing anything to improve the community. So it just goes from there to beer, to whatever we can use the money for. So it's not just in DRC, it's in Zim as well. It's here in South Africa. The Zamas needs to be actually formalized. Thank you so much for mentioning that, and also touching on the youth to organize themselves. This I would like to ask Professor Dwaba on this. I've noticed we have a lot of Pan-African groups. They are all fighting to say, AU needs to do this. The Chinese are coming and doing that. These are coming. They have one goal, one objective, to have African solutions to African problems. But there are many of them. Many. It's like they can not come together as youth to say we are under one umbrella. They cannot join each other. When I see Mr. Mkwena running something in entrepreneurship as a youth, when I see a PICTA as an umbrella for ICT organization, I rather go and start my own on the side and invite my own people. We cannot organize to be under PICTA or to be under Mr. Mkwena for some reason. How do we fight this? Because that's also where change needs to start, in uniting as Africans. How do we do that? How do we collaborate? How do we bring in young people or women? It's like a fight for power.
Yeah. So Martha, I have a few young people who follow me on Twitter. So I'm always very careful with people who follow me, and that people that are allowed to come into my network. Because I don't believe in quantity. I believe in quality of people. So as a result, even though I've just accepted you on LinkedIn, there are hundreds of people I don't accept. I am accepting you now because you are quality and I've engaged with you and I've listened to you. So now you are accepted on my LinkedIn page. But other than that, I close people completely. I don't take everybody that comes on. And I mention this because a
I
young
hope
man
to be accepted too. Sorry.
I think Mr. Mko, you shall be because you don't wear a tie, so okay. But I think there's a young man who impressed me a few days ago when I was at the NEPAD presentation that I had to set the tone for the conference for 2 days. And this young man came. His name is Daniel Amwako. His profile on Twitter he calls himself a limitless optimist. He's now on my Twitter feed and he comments every now and then. So he said something that Mr. Mkwena said today, that you see, if you wait to be invited to the table, you may never be invited to the table, because the people at the table are there to defend and protect their staff, you see. So you need to come and create your own table and say, hey, this is my table, and quite frankly, I'm pushing it into your table. So this is important, right? For people who may be wondering, my Twitter thing is @Tzoro1, @TZORO1 is my Twitter handle. It's easier to find my LinkedIn page. But I'm saying this because when I was listening to Mr. Mkwena as a youthful member, and that's another thing for me that I like, is that I go to conferences, and there was a conference in Cape Town where the conference nearly did not start because I was sitting on a panel and there were 4 of us. And I said, sorry, where's the youth? And they said, sorry? I said, yeah, where's the youth? I said, I see there's 4 of us here. We're all old people. Where is the youth? And some people in the youth stood up and said, yes, Mr. Mdwaba. Yeah, we asked. Nobody will let us in. We wanted to get involved. Eventually, we got one person from the youth to join us on the panel. And these are the kind of things we need to do. We need to consciously change the narrative. If you don't consciously change the narrative, it's not going to change by itself. And that's why I'm saying in your village, Martha, because by mentioning your village starts to stick. That's why I was saying you mention things a few times in my environment until it sticks. So you'll see everywhere, every CV I send says I was born in Colville, Herschel in the Eastern Cape, right? And when I participate in global events, I was in a global event where I helped to get President Cyril Ramaphosa to co-chair. When they asked me to write my CV, there were 28 of us in that Global Commission on the Future of Work in the world. 28 people coming from all over. In the 100 words we had, I made sure that all the things that matter are there, including being able to say an adjunct associate professor of law at the University of the Western Cape. That is called being deliberate, because everybody's going to quote Harvard University, Oxford University, London School of Economics, mang. So you need to make sure that for posterity, you quote your people, because the world works like that. When you come, and I gave this example to them, and they were upset, some of them. I said to them, what I find to be very hypocritical about the world, and people talking about how we must end unequal globalization. I said, it's easier said than done. It's rhetoric. I'm sorry, you don't want to end unequal globalization. You like it. Because when somebody comes to a meeting, and then they say, who are you? You say, I'm so-and-so, so-and-so. They say, where are you from? You say, I'm from New York. Then they say, oh, and the one, I'm from London. I can assure you, in that meeting, the person from New York and the person from London are going to be given opportunity to speak the whole meeting.
That's right.
Who comes from, I'm sorry, I didn't get the name. I'll get it eventually from that. Yeah?
From Perengwa. It's called Perengwa.
Perengwa, from Perengwa. They comes from Perengwa. When you say, I'm from Perengwa, they say, sorry, where? You say Perengwa. Where's Perengwa? Well, it's in the Midlands. It's a lovely place. That's where I come from. You see, I look good. I come from there. They don't care. And your ideas, therefore, never stick because you are never going to be given an opportunity to share your ideas. Your ideas never make it to the table. They never enjoy light in the sun. They never enjoy time in the sun, right? So for me, these are the things we must change. And how do you change that if you are modest and humble? I'm not saying let's be disrespectful. There's a very fine line between being arrogant and offensive and respectful and being assertive and strong and firm on what you believe in, right? That doesn't mean you are not being modest. Why is it that us as African people, we must always be able to say, no, I come from Mkuku, I come from a shack somewhere, and then, oh, shame, it's nice. But when you say, no, I own a 3-story house here, they say, oh, did you hear? He was very arrogant. That's not arrogant, it's a fact.
That's right.
It's a fact. We need to change the facts. But coming back to the question that you asked, so, we have not been taught to collaborate much as Africans. We don't see the power of unity. We have this disrespect and envy. It's a colonialist thing. We think to be competitive, I must switch off Mr. Mukwege. A young lady who was doing a manicure for me a few months ago, she says to me, hey, the problem with our people is that they think that when they use your candle to light their candle, it doesn't work. They must switch off your candle. They must blow your candle off.
Thank you.
So we must all be in the dark rather than use Martha's candle or Sonwabo's candle. How can they have candles and I don't have candles? Instead of just bringing your candle or going to find a way to get a candle and then put on your candle using the other candle and we work together. You see, these are very important things, but these are things that you learn. It's a consciousness thing. That's why I'm saying it's a colonization thing. We have to wake up and smell the coffee and understand. When I mention Productivity SA, by the way, on Twitter is @Productivity SA, okay? Productivity SA. And I encourage people to go in there, ask what Productivity SA does, go to the website. Productivity SA doesn't give money. It doesn't have money to give, but it gives programs, it gives expertise, it intervenes in programs, it intervenes in enhanced productivity and so on. But we also have something called PAPA, the Pan-African Productivity Association. The Pan-African Productivity Association, unfortunately, has only 11 countries. Why? When we've got 55 countries. Where are the other African countries? How then do we get to the promised land and deal with the SDGs and the problems when we've got only 11 countries out of 55 in PAPA? Those are the problems, right, that we have. But we need, the COVID has demonstrated more than any other time, Martha, in the world, that all of us must collaborate. All of us need to work together. And you start to work with somebody else by respecting them. By believing you can get something from them, and also they believing they can get something out of you. And by living Ubuntu as opposed to being rhetoric about Ubuntu. Ubuntu is not a concept that you talk about theoretically. Ubuntu is about the basic things of being able to see that just because the person is standing at a traffic light without a job, it doesn't mean that you must spit at them. You don't know where those people have been. You don't know why they are there. Just because you were lucky and you got to a place first does not mean you better. It doesn't make you better. It just means you got there first. That's all. So for heaven's sake, share what you got to first. That's all. Right? I mean, of course, I must tell you, I'm sharing my expertise only because this is my brother on a Sunday. On a Sunday, I would not be found talking at any conference. So that's the one thing I do. So it's only because it's my brother. I've done it twice now. And it was not last year, it was this year, Martha. I've done it twice in 6 months. So 6 or 8 months. But me, I believe in sharing. And what do you do? People always say to me, people come to me, say to me, hey, I can't believe you made time for me. You don't understand the people who come to my office who follow me on LinkedIn, and then we have a conversation, and then eventually they come to my office. And then for 15 minutes, they can't sit still. So I'm saying, sorry, you wanted to see me. Yeah, I still can't believe you are seeing me. What? Get over yourself. Get over yourself and tell me why you are here. We are talking. Yeah, but you know, Prof. I said, no. I said, this is the problem. We spend too much time glorifying titles rather than taking your space and saying, hey, I'm here because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Is there somebody you know that can do 6, 7, 8, 9? These are the things we need to change. Those are the things we need to change. I can tell you many examples. I can tell you a guy who sends me messages and prays for me every day because I met him at a restaurant and I started talking to him. And when I said to him, you know, at the end, I didn't tell him who I was, what I do. I said, no, you know what, go on my LinkedIn page. But when you get there, please say who you are. Introduce yourself because I've got lots of people waiting that I'm not going to let in, some of them, right? He went, and the next thing he was sending me a message on LinkedIn. He says, but Prof, you didn't tell me. So I didn't tell you what? You didn't tell me who you are. I said, but I did. I talked the whole evening at the restaurant with you. You know who I am. Who I am is a human being that talked to you whilst you were serving me. And you served me well. Therefore, I thought you're a young man who deserves to have more time that we must share, right? This guy kept on saying to me, yeah, but I can't believe what is God doing to me? Why is God doing? God is saying something to me. Because of the way society is structured. We create gods, we create things, you know, and people are untouchable, are inaccessible. You can't get to them. And they want to keep it like that. As soon as you want to break away from that, they attack you. Because they call you a reactionary, they call you all kinds of words that are going to make you look bad. So I'm sorry, I've taken a little bit long to answer your question.
No, it is well, and it was well articulated, and thank you so much for the examples. I think we as young people, yes.
I wanted to, can I just have a 30-second on that? There's a quote that I wanted to close with by Prof. Vuskumete, and it speaks exactly to what you were saying, you know, where he says the youth needs to deliberately identify their potential of power in unity. All of these forces against youth progress can be challenged, you know. And I mean, he goes further to say, you know, we are not singing in one voice as the youth of this continent. We are also not yet in one room, you know. And he says colonization and oppression of Black people on this continent was tackled by key young leaders from the continent who met at institutions of higher learning, and it was tough, but they did it. And I mean, I love where he says we have internet platforms through which you can connect, but we're not doing so. I think, you know, Prof. Vuskumete summarizes what even Prof was now talking about. On African thought leadership.
Yes, that's very important because when we also look, I think at the gap between the older and the younger it's just too wide. And the youth, we are not as much as the older ones are holding on to power and wanting to own everything and not giving a chance. As youth, we are not also looking back to see that the older used to be younger and how they united.
Yeah.
You know, they had a common goal, a common enemy, and they came together. So as today's youth, what is our common goal? What is our common enemy? What do we want to unite for? Maybe that's also another issue. We don't see why we need to unite, and we don't know what we need to unite for. And this is not just about the youth. And when we look at at continental level, it's Africa. South Africa is doing what South Africa is doing. Zim is doing what Zim is doing. And Prof mentioned the issue of visas. It's not easy. We're still using visas to move from South Africa to go to Nigeria. You need a visa. You need to apply the passport. To just get a passport, it's just difficult. We are not there, but we are talking about Africa free trade. How do we get to that? It's very difficult, and we need to change a lot of things before we can get to that. I need to ask Mr. Sonwabo Mtwaba on the policies. I do believe where youth and entrepreneurship is concerned, there are a lot of policy changes that needs to be implemented and highlighted, pushed at government level. Is there anything that PACTA is working on in terms of policy making or contributing to?
Thank you, Martha. From a PACTA perspective, we have not started working on any policy making activities. we strongly believe that policies have to change. There's a presentation that I'm doing tomorrow to EU structure, where I'm saying even when it comes to before we look at entrepreneurship, we need to look at, do we have digital infrastructure? And right now in Africa, we're sitting at about 900 million unconnected.
Wow.
Okay. South Africa, we're sitting at connected 53, 59% interchangeably. Now, how do we promote or enable the environment for entrepreneurship to happen if there is no connectivity? We are, and in the presentation that I'm going to do tomorrow, I'm saying it's time that the African countries must reach a consensus on policies in the digital in infrastructure in the digital space, and on entrepreneurship. Even our own country, South Africa, is not doing a lot. There's a lot of lip service, but there's nothing that is tangible on the ground. South Africa is not unique. The whole of Africa is like that. And I think Professor Mtwaba mentioned that there's ICT hubs or hubs somewhere. Everyone is starting his own hub.
Yeah.
But there's no collaboration. We all believe that we need to stand on our own, and it has been mentioned that was due to colonization, but it is important, Martha, for PITA as we go into the second year to get into real business, which is influencing policy and advocating for change of the existing policy. I don't believe in changing something that exists. I believe in forklifting what exists and start anew.
That's fine.
Are you happy?
Yes. We're good. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Sonwabo Mtwaba. I want to also look at what a professor mentioned earlier in terms of child labor. It seems like a problem. But when we talk about child labor, which age groups are we talking about? I just want to go primitive a little bit. I do believe that anything that was built in Africa back in the day before colonization, these were young people building all of this. Everybody was involved and so forth. So when we move the age group to 18, to say from 18 now that's an adult who can do things, are we not encouraging older people to keep thinking young? Because you find out that somebody who is 21, who is 35, because they fall under the youth category, they are still not taking responsibility in terms of building Africa or starting a business or starting something. Most of them right now are sitting at home waiting for some handouts and are not starting something at all. Should we rephrase in terms of what we call child labor, what we call youth, and also see like according to who? According to whose policy?
Martha, as I said, the child labor standard, which is referred to as the West Forms of Child Labor Convention, has reached universality in terms of ratification by countries. And that means everybody has done it, right? As I said. So this is a convention of the ILO. So it is the ILO through its members that determines the age. The ILO has 187 members, as I said, in the world. All those members sit in the governing body. Well, they sit through their people. In the International Labour Conference, they're all there in June, July every year. But throughout the year, they've got people from every region. Every region has got representatives that sit on the governing body. And and the age is 18 years. Okay, so it defines as a child a person under 18 years of age, and it requires, of course, states that ratify this convention to eliminate the worst forms of child labor, including all forms of slavery or practices that are similar to slavery, such as the sale and trafficking of children, debt bondage, serfdom, and compulsory labor, and so on and so on. It also requires those states that are ratifying to provide the necessary and appropriate direct assistance for the removal of children from the worst forms of child labor. Therefore, you must have monitoring laws, you must have ways of implementing through your inspectors, arrest people, and so on and so on. So, I mean, that's a different topic on its own, but I think that's what I can share right now. And when I talk about ratifying, I think it's important for your listeners that when you ratify, it means you've given notification to the ILO that through your parliamentary processes and your lawmaking processes in your country, you've internalized that convention into your law. That's what ratification means, right? It just doesn't mean that you've seen it, it's sitting on top of your desk. That's what it means. And so, you know, and everything, as I said when I started, everything that you can think of in the world of work comes from the ILO in the form of a convention. So when you think of a minimum wage, I think I made this example the last time. That's Convention 131. So when we're talking a minimum wage in South Africa, it comes from that convention. And then South Africa does it according to its peculiar needs for what it needs to do, and it compromises for South Africa. So I hope I'm answering you, Martha.
Yes, okay, that's answers it perfectly well. We mentioned education, you know, in Africa. I wanted to know, anybody can answer this. Should we add entrepreneurship from a primary level? Because I feel that the education system that we have is for employer-employee relationship, and somebody is not, you know, academically good, you know, in this, especially in our African setup, you are, you know, they write you off. Be what do you call it? Be a lawyer, be an engineer, be this, be that. But we have seen quite a number of people who are not that educated, but have made it in entrepreneurship. They make mistakes because they did not like have that guidance or you know, that blueprint to running a business, to being an entrepreneur, to marketing, to sales, but they have it in them. Should we rather say maybe the you know, the African continent should add entrepreneurship as you know, from as early as primary level? Is this something that is doable?
In my view,
I think,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think matters not even a discussion. You know, it's a definitely, is like Prof say. I think there's really we really have serious problems in the continent. We've been talking about this for the last 15 years. You know, I even went to Africa Talks Job, I think 2016, 2017. This has been discussed. When I was in school, you know, this was also being discussed. Here are the facts: is that people are unemployed. Most people, more than 1.3 billion, it's citizens are Africans, you know, in the continent, and it's 70% of the young people. Now, for you to want to create jobs for that amount of people, it's going to take another 100 years for people to be employed. We know that the easiest and the quickest way, but also the most sustainable way, is through entrepreneurship. The problem that we have in the continent is when we speak of entrepreneurship, and I touched yesterday to Mr. Sonwabo, so when you speak of entrepreneurship, we all speaking billion deals, we all speaking million deals. We seem to have confused entrepreneurship to multi-million deals. Someone can start a simple gardening company and start from the scratch with a machine, which is 2,800 rands, 1.4. Start to build up and have clients that pay him every month 400 rands. Eventually, it's going to get to 20 clients, that makes him how much a month? You know, so there's a really a wrong narrative about business. So when you say to someone, hey, I want to start business, the first question that they will ask is, do you have funding? You know, when you speak to government officials, you know, you say, you know, I want to start business. All of them, they say, no, we don't have funding. Who said we want funding? Sometimes we need to train young people. And education in this instance, and maybe Prof will tell you, it's not necessarily also writing an exam. It's taking a person, it's training a person, it's giving them tools to survive in order for them to run their own business or in order for them to survive. So it's not only about writing, I sell fruits, I get 3 rands. No, that's not the education that we're talking about. We're talking about giving people from a young age, because once a person, I'll give a last example. Once a person has skills of entrepreneur, it goes beyond entrepreneurship. It goes to your personal. You are able to do budgeting. You are able to know what comes in, what gets out. You are able to inform yourself about the product, you know, and other products that might come that are going to compete with you. So in general perspective, we're talking about your life here. Even if you decide in the future that, you know what, I no longer want to be an entrepreneur because I've been offered this beautiful post at the mining company. The skills that you have utilized and that you have learned through entrepreneurship are going to go through even at your employment center, because you know to respect time. You know what we talk about when we talk about budgeting, profit, loss margin. These are things that are not necessarily a X plus X exam, but these are life tools. So we must stop seeing entrepreneurship as you know, something from the sky. As you know, I need to provide oil for the Zim government. You know, I need to provide petrol for Ethiopian. No, entrepreneurship is a day-to-day basis on how to survive and give people those skills and tools. That is my perspective in it.
So you know, Martha, just to add, so it's a bit of a complicated mess, you know, because I used to say a few years ago that everybody will tell you that we need to start thinking about jobs that you don't necessarily find only out of university education, right? Mm-hmm. Which you get from these TVETs and so on. But you find, because of attitudinal problems and status orientation and community pressure, that everybody is okay with other people's children going to a TVET, but not their own children. So when I'm talking to you, I say, yeah, your children must go. Yeah, we need plumbers, we need electricians. Yeah, and we do. And I mean, these are people who earn lots of money because they're scarce, right? Yeah. Emergency services, laying fiber. You know, there's a lot of things that people can do, but you know, some people don't like dirty work. You know, there's a status thing. There's a label attached to it. You know that, yeah, you know, and that's how people are graded. So we also need to find a way of getting the youth. I used to talk a few years ago about what I refer to as the coolification of certain jobs, you know, from the word cool. Mm-hmm. That it's not only cool to go and to be a doctor, to do medicine and to do engineering. It is cool to make money and make a living and support your family and have dignity. That's cool. It's not cool that you go to school but you can't get a job and you're unemployable or can't create one yourself. That's not cool. Okay? So the definition of cool needs to change with young people. Very important. And again, who must change? The parents and the young people. Because it's well and good that you say young people must change. But the unfortunate thing is that you have some parents who want to achieve through their kids, right?
That's true.
I failed being an engineer, so I'm going to make damn sure my child is an engineer. And the poor child keeps telling me, hey, I want to be an artist. No, artist in Yonale. What artist?
Yeah.
No, an artist. You're going to be an engineer. Full stop. End of discussion. Right?
That's fine.
So there's a lot of change that needs to happen. These are not easy concepts, but we all need to change one step at a time, one brick at a time, one person at a time. All of us needs to be the change that we need. I'm not good at saying the person who said that now, because my daughter, who's also a member of the youth, my daughter's just finished a master's degree and has opened an art psychotherapist practice in London. She doesn't want me to quote this particular guy because she keeps telling me he's a racist, so I won't mention his name. But there's a guy who said you must be the change you seek. Now, my daughter insists that he's not a good person now to quote. But we have to be the change we want, right?
Yeah.
And so when you talk about new courses, entrepreneurship, I saw Tabitha has been commenting a lot. Tabitha, you must give a prize to Tabitha. Tabitha has been very active. I haven't seen other people as active as Tabitha on your show. She's come on at least 5 times, to say something. She says entrepreneurship must be introduced from grade 4, she said, as far as she's concerned, right? I agree with her. In fact, even earlier. So for me, entrepreneurship, productivity, technology, creative thinking, some basic legal awareness and accounting will still be necessary for how you run your business, right? Important. But also what is called RPL, the recognition for prior learning, is very important. That's as right. You get lifelong learning. I was part, when I was at the Southern Sun Hotels, of working with the director for beverage and food and beverages at the time, a gentleman by the name of Bill Gallagher, who's now passed away a long time ago, where he took chefs who in South Africa are some of the most amazing chefs, but they've never been trained, they've never gone to school, but they can cook all the recipes that are written in books.
That's right.
And so he took them and found a way of creating a program to recognize them from a recognition of prior learning point of view, so that they're given the same status as those who got a degree, right? Because they've got the knowledge. Why don't they have the recognition that goes with that knowledge, right? So these are very important things that we need to start at the basics. So I think, Martha, for me, when you talk about quality education, that's SDG 4.
Yes.
You can't talk about quality education when it does not serve its community, when it's not relevant to its people. It's qualitative to who? How do you work on this quality when there's no impact on the ground? This is how it should be. There should be a consultation process that involves everybody, social dialogue that involves young people. And that is why I say to you, there are some people who are not very happy about me becoming the DG of that institution next year, I must tell you. They are not happy at all because, some of us think a bit differently, and some of us are able to tell you to go to some place and disappear there if you don't want to listen to other people speak. And so for me, as somebody who I can say in this case, Mr. Mukwena, as a future DG, not a future leader, you hear. I'm not saying I'm not a leader today, but as the future DG of the ILO, I can tell you that these are the things we need to start working with all over the world. And for me, I will make it my business as the DG of that institution to try and make sure that all the good work that the ILO has done over the past, the good work of standards, the normative environment, that we are able to enhance and consolidate that, so that we are able to use that and create relevance and make sure that we have a world that has a workplace or the world of work that serves its people, that is able to have impact and social justice, that we recognize that entrepreneurship has nothing to do with ideology. It has a lot to do with being enterprising. That productivity has nothing to do with ideology. It has a lot to do with doing things better all the time. That is important.
That's true.
So I want to end there. And I had said to Sonambo, I'm going to run a little bit early. So in the next 5 minutes, I'd like to give my warning that I'm going to start running away.
All right, no, it's okay. We also need to close in a few minutes, and thank you so much, Tabitha, who is one of my greatest fans. I must say, she really loved these talks. She said, "I started making fudges and sewing at grade 4, while I was excelling in my academics. It really gives you something to keep you busy and out of the streets. You need to beg and have no time to loiter. Even you won't become useless as an adult." So yeah, she is one of those people who is working for themselves, doing something for herself. So entrepreneurship, it's something that is closer to her heart. And thank you so much, Professor. Since you're gonna be running in the next 5 minutes, I would like to just give you, 2 minutes or so for your closing remarks in terms of your what would you want to say to a young people, who wants to succeed in entrepreneurship or in whatever they are doing, and what's the way forward? What do you say to those Pan-African groups who are, I think, more than 100 fighting for one goal? What do you say to us?
Well, I think I've said quite a lot during this interaction. I cannot round off without again reiterating that change is difficult for all of us. It's easier said than done, but all of us don't like to be in an uncomfortable position. It's easy to do the things you did yesterday and do them today and do them tomorrow and do them every day, even when you can see that you might be going over a cliff. So I think we need to do more introspection. We need to encourage our young people to be inspired by the right values, to aspire to get to heightened positions that are not based on title, that are based on content, that are based on delivery. Not for me to tell you that I'm the president of this and the chairman of this and the chairwoman of that. For me, that's not important. In fact, when you tell me those things, you just upset me. So when people tell me that in a conversation that is supposed to work with solutions, and you want to remind me about your self-importance, I lose respect. And I'm very quick at expressing my loss of respect that I've now lost. Okay? We need to change this conversation. So we need young people who recognize that the world never changes itself. The world has to be changed by you. And, I was trying to think just now, there is a quotation, but I can't remember it. It's a quotation by, I think Beyonce uses this quotation, but also the Secretary General of the United Nations, Guterres. He says something like, power is not given. Power is taken. If you don't take the power, and do something about it, some people are going to hold it dear to themselves. And when you don't take the power, always remember that life and the universe does not like vacuums. When there's a vacuum, you're going to have a fool step in. And a fool is going to do good with it. And the good the fool does with it is something called distraction. So you need to do it, wake up, take the power, and change the world. That's what young people should be doing. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor. And we look forward to working with you again, especially next year when you become the Director General. We really look forward to bring you back on radio and with Pact so that we can understand how you are going to implement everything that you plan to work on. We'll be following on LinkedIn, and thank you for accepting me. I saw that. And on Twitter, we'll keep on following you so that we know the journey, we know what's going on, and also keep learning. I know that the youth want to be included and we can work faster. But the elders, they know the road, they've walked it. So we'll keep on tapping into your understanding, as if we're in church, we would say into your anointing.
Thank
It's yeah.
you.
So we'll keep on tapping into that. I know that as young people, we are so desperate to be involved and to be at the table. And it doesn't mean to say the older they don't know what they are doing. We do have great ones that we can learn from. So we'll always come back. So thank you so much, and for your time.
And I
It's really appreciated.
note, Martha, you must also always remember the African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone.
Go along.
If you want to go far, go together.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right. All right. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I see, Mr. Sonobom Tuava, you wanted to add a few things before we close off regarding PICTA and the way forward and what we're working on.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much, Martha. I think it's very important for us to highlight, although we've achieved so much in a space of 15 months, without people volunteering, without collaboration with other organizations based in Africa, we will not achieve our mandate. And we believe as PICTA that we have to collaborate. We need to unite as Africans to make a difference. It is not a journey for one man, it's a journey for all of us. And for us to achieve and make a difference and have the Africa we want, we need to work together. Youth is very important. It's a critical element that is sitting at 70% and 70% unemployed. For not everyone can be employed, so we need to focus on entrepreneurship. And
That's
unfortunately, Martha, and I'm going to say this, without our rural and peri-urban areas being connected, we've got a lot of youth that is trapped in the peri and rural areas. Professor has just said he comes from a rural, so I'm his brother, I come from rural. I know a few days ago, I was told that ICASA actually was surveying my village to see what infrastructure is there. I said to the person who was telling me, you don't need to go physically to survey. They say they could not go because they didn't have time. I said, you can ask me, there's no infrastructure. Okay? So for even the informal sector, I don't believe that the informal sector must be changed, but I think it must be organized. It must be given the infrastructure or been enabled to achieve the way they are working. They can be more efficient in achieving what they're doing every day. Sometimes when you change the format or the structure of the business, it kills the business because that person can't scale. So I believe that in Africa, we need to be fully digitally connected. Okay, and that is a challenge. It is a, and I'm going to say this: digitalization or digital infrastructure or internet. I think, let me go granular. Internet is the fourth pillar. If you're looking at water, if you're looking at sewer, and you're looking at electricity, the internet is the fourth one.
That's right.
There's people, and the youth needs to be given this opportunity. Already we are talking of metaverse. While the youth is not connected, the youth need to be connected. But as PICTA on this panel sitting with you, Martha, here, and Mr. Mukwena, we need volunteers that are youth in PICTA right through Africa. We need volunteers that have got understanding and capacity and competency in policy making or policy drafting. We need as PICTA to start focusing on policy. Mr. Mukwena raised the policy issue. And Mr. Mukwena, you were correct. We really need to start drafting and influencing policy right across the continent. Without influencing policy, we will not going to achieve what we want to achieve. Other organizations that are listening today, we are looking in collaborating with other organizations. Let's not collaborate because someone someone you've heard of, someone in some circles that you respect. Let's collaborate if you don't know the people.
Yeah, that's right.
PICTA is one of the youngest organizations that I know, but let's partner, let's collaborate. And Martha, we are going aggressively in fundraising for PICTA, because we will never achieve what we want to achieve without resources. We need the resources to scale up and have the capacity to deliver. Thank you, Martha.
All right. Thank you so much for that. The power of collaboration, and I do believe we once had a webinar on that, on the power of collaboration, which worked very well because all the organizations that we collaborate, that we brought in on that webinar, we are now working with them. And if we want to go far, we need to go together. It's very, very important. I will always go back to the colonial era. When they came to take Africa, they sat at a table, all of them, and decided who take what. And they knew that one country could have done that, could just be like, okay, England, we have decided to take Africa, but they knew they were not going to do it. There's going to be resistance. They don't understand the area. So they have to bring together each and every one of them to play a role in colonizing Africa. Now we want to change things, and we want to go. South Africa is going on their own. And what? Yes, you can go on.
And sorry, Martha, one thing, Mr. Mukwana wants to leave.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mukwana, thank you very much for the contribution.
All right, it's fine. It's okay. All right, all right.
I need to leave, Martha. I'm writing my exam tomorrow.
All right.
So I need to prepare again. But thanks again. I think my last word would be young people must organize themselves. We need to really organize ourselves to take charge of our continent. Stay blessed, and thanks for the invitation. It was a fruitful engagement. I learned so much, and thanks for inviting me, and you, Martha, for your facilitation. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother.
All right. That was Kifilwe Mokwena, and he really highlighted a lot of things that we were touching on in terms of youth involvement, policy making, and so forth. I think we're gonna be ending in a minute or so to end our broadcast. And thank you so much, Mr. Dwaba. You wanted to say something?
I've put our LinkedIn on your message just to view it if you can, please, because LinkedIn is we are very active as PICTA on LinkedIn, and we share lots of information on LinkedIn, from training that is available that PICTA is offering to everyday activities worldwide. We put it on LinkedIn. But as well, Martha, we need to be very careful as Africans not to be recolonized, and we are in a process of being colonized through digital infrastructure by Chinese and related people. We need to stand up, especially the youth, because we are much older. We will leave this earth and leave the youth inheriting the ills that we're leaving behind. So it's very important, the youth, to unite, and we must have our own African solutions.
Oh, that's right. That's so true. Recolonization is happening right under our noses, and I just wish Professor Mdwaba has actually used the right word in terms of lack of decisive and bold leadership in Africa. I know we do have our own imagination, but they are still inviting whoever have the bag. The one who have the bag takes Africa, and the deals that are being signed behind closed doors in the name of investment. It's not good for Africa. It's debts that we are going to pay. When we look at Agenda 2063 itself, young people, most of them, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what Agenda 2063 is all about. But it is there. It's somebody who is pushing for it. In 2063, those who are 80 years old now in decision making in Africa, they probably won't be here. And they won't be answerable. We will be picking the debt. We'll be picking the loans, and we'll be repaying that. So we need to be involved, invite ourselves at the table, say no to certain policies that are being implemented under our noses, and say, okay, you say the Chinese are coming to invest in Berengwa, for instance. They are bringing in this amount. What are they taking out? How are they taking it out? How are
Yes.
we involved? We need to
Yes.
question and stand and say no. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We need to say no, because if we don't, we are the ones who are going to suffer, unfortunately. All right.
You've said it already.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mdwaba.
Thank,
I think
thank you very much, Martha. As normal, thank you, thank you, thank you. We've been together with Radio 54 Africa Panorama now for 15 months working together.
yes, that's right. That's right.
And you've really assisted us in raising our voices, and thank you to you, because we in your station we only work with you, and you are really looking after us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Thank you so much. We'll get in touch. Lovely. Thank you. Have a great day. All right. Thank you so much to the viewers, to the listeners. We're still in. I think I do have just a few minutes to wrap up on the topic, and we're gonna be catching up again soon. Next week we do have another topic boiling, and if you want to be part of PIKTA, go on their website, www.pikta.org. I've also shared their LinkedIn handle on our Facebook, which is at pikta.org. You need to just go on LinkedIn and search for PIKTA, Pan-African ICT Association. Just go on LinkedIn, you'll find them. You go on Twitter, you'll find them, and as well as on their website. Anybody can be part of them in ICT entrepreneurship. I'm heading their entrepreneurship department, so you can also get in touch with me. You can get in touch with Mr. Sonwabo Mdwaba on LinkedIn as well. So it's it's an open platform where you can go and become a member as an individual, a member as an organization, a member as a company. We have done quite a number of webinars and hackathons and reaching out to students especially in the ICT sector. So that's it from PIKTA and from the webinar. I'm just gonna be playing around, if I can call it, playing around with you in the next 20 minutes.